Yes, I have it here. Oops, sorry. We're going to start the show with like breaking the glasses again. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this conference on public health and decriminalization organized by ESWA. Once again in this beautiful and nice location where we have a very beautiful site of the city of Brussels, and now with this white ground, looks pretty Christmassy. So thank you very much. Thank you very much for showing this interest. We honestly, we didn't expect that it was going to be that much interest in coming here. We were expecting maybe 30 persons or something, and you started to show interest. You started to ask. You started to send emails and start to register. So I'm happy that we grew up a little bit more, the family, the attendance. You'd also send amazing proposals for workshops that we're going to see and learn and also exchange during these coming 3 days. And of course, we are going to finish this conference in something that we love to do, because we love to occupy and to get into the European Parliament as much as we can, because, well, that's a place where we usually, as sex workers, as migrants, as racialized people, we don't have too much space. You know, it's a place full of white, cisgender, mostly right-wing persons. And after the next elections, it's going to be like more right-wing elected, more right-wing there. So it's never a space. It's never a place that it's friendly for us. And anytime we have these kind of events, the whores, the hookers, the sex workers are going to occupy that building, because that's also our right. We are also paying for that. And it's our right as any organized movement to have meetings there and to be seen by the lawmakers, that the ones that are approving and passing legislations that are harmful for us, that we have been fighting and combating more recently since last year with this violence against women directive. It's something that was needed, but of course, as usual, we have these voices that conflate violence with sex work, because basically they don't like sex. That's my conclusion. They really don't like sex. So it's like they have a problem with it. And when it's combined with money, they have even more problem. So we're going to talk about all these legislations that have been discussed. These legislations where ESWA has been advocating together with their allies of the Coalition for the Sex Worker Rights and Inclusion, that with organizations like IPPF, like Amnesty International, like ILGA World. So Irena will give you some greater insight later this morning. And basically, the objective of this conference is that we can gather together, that you as researchers and as sex workers, or researchers with some experience on sex work, that we also are really proud of these colleagues that through sex work have been also getting into academia, doing their researches, their master's degree, etc. So we are also getting into the academia and the academic bubble, where we can also be those researchers that makes this research, that is evidence-based, that criminalization of sex work or any aspect of criminalization of any aspects of sex work is absolutely harming. And we need to keep producing evidence. Sometimes it's not even listened, it's not taken in consideration because unfortunately our politicians are more busy or worried about winning the next election, the next role, the next thing they're going to do after this electoral cycle. And it's our work to keep pushing the next one to come in order to not be criminalized, in order to not be being harmed, and in order to have our labor and human rights respected. So, welcome again. I would like to also give a little bit of house rules or housekeeping note. So you have with us the ESWA staff that you can see. Luca here that you all know. We have Marion there that she's doing pictures on whatever. If you don't want to be photographed or taking the pictures, please ask Marion, and she will take care about. And we also have our lovely Irena that will be explaining about policy, our policy officer, one of the non-sex workers in the team. So this is the ally, one of the greatest allies that we have. So if you have any question, any problem, we also are here for your well-being. So we can approach us if you have any question on logistics, on food, on if there's any inappropriate comment. We hope not, etc. It can happen. So please refer to us. And what else? And I think that's it. So I will give the floor to Luca, that is going to give a little bit more of details and explain how is it going from now on. And thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Sabrina. Hi, everyone. And for those who didn't know, this was Sabrina Sanchez, our director. And she's a bit like Lady Gaga. She doesn't think she needs to be introduced anymore. She's like, everybody knows me, even recognize me in the red hair. I'm Luca Stevenson. I'm director of programs at ESWA. And it's really nice to see you all coming this early morning, Monday, facing the snow and the difficulty to arrive. So I'm just going to give you a little overview of the next few days, also give a bit more like kind of guidelines about these few days, and then we can start the conference with our first keynote speaker and presentation. So first of all, we wanted to acknowledge this is actually a bit different than what we usually do at ESWA. Usually, ESWA organizes events mainly for sex workers, and the majority of people in the room when we organize events, like the Red Umbrella Academy in Poland last week, the Congress we had, the trans training we had in Portugal, are mainly sex workers. I think it's the first time we organize an event where possibly there is not a majority of sex workers, and I think it's important to acknowledge this in terms of like how we're going to interact with each other. So we wanted to do this conference to bring together researchers, experts, sex workers, activists, policymakers to come and talk and share knowledge. And this is really the aim of the conference, is to learn from one another. So we have many, many panels and workshops, and we hope there will be lots of interesting conversations about this. And then the second aim is really to network and create new connections, possibly start to think of new projects, listen to one person, be like, oh, we could do something similar in my country, or we can do a partnership. And we really created, hopefully, a program that allows a lot of time for presentation, but also we have long coffee breaks, we have 90-minute lunches, we have lots of time in the evening. So we really want to encourage you to take time to talk and meet with one another. And to start, we wanted to actually take also 1 minute to recognize that many of us have traveled to come here, and we arrive here carrying our own emotional, baggage. I don't like the word baggage, but we come here in a specific state of mind and state of heart and state of soul. Some of us have gone through lots of changes this year, moved to a new country, had a baby, started a new job, etc., or had very difficult year. We know that the world outside is very difficult. There has been lots of violence and lots of trauma for lots of people. And we want to acknowledge that when we come in a room together for 4 days, there might be moments where there are tension, where there are conflict. So we want to avoid this as much as possible, and we want people to really be kind to one another. And if there is anything that you find troubling in your conversation with people, maybe something that is said that is triggering you, please come and talk to us. And I'll explain a bit more about this in a minute. So the first thing we wanted to do is take 1 minute for you to turn to the person next to you. Well, next to you, you're going to know them. To turn to the person either behind you or in front of you that hopefully you don't know, and introduce yourself by saying basically your name, where you are coming from, and if you are a researcher, if you're an activist, in a very short time, okay? So we just give you a couple of minutes to turn around and basically make a new friend, which is the aim of the conference. Okay, thank you. Gosh. Thank you, thank you. So, you just met someone new. Maybe this person is going to change your life. Maybe we will celebrate a wedding next year. But we really encourage you to talk to as many people as possible and really create connection and like ideas, sharing ideas, etc. together. I also wanted to say a couple of like logistic things. I haven't slept much, so my brain is kind of going in all the directions, but not in the right order. DSA, so if you are, a few of you are scholars, which means that you have received some financial support to attend the conference. There's around like 20 people here. If you are a person who's a scholar, come to the break to see Sabrina, and she will give you a big kiss and a bit of money. And the money covers dinner, basically. Dinner and any extra cost that you have, and that's it. So that's for the scholars. For the food, lunch is at the hotel. I'm not exactly sure if it's going to be here or in the restaurant where we had breakfast, which is on the first floor. I'll check this at the break. You have the little bracelet. Actually, it doesn't really do anything, this bracelet. I just wanted to get rid of them. So now you have a bracelet for 4 days. But if you're a participant of the conference, you can have lunch. And lunch reception. One very important thing, as Sabrina was saying, on Thursday we have an event in the European Parliament. It's a different registration than the conference here. Hopefully you all received the information and you all registered to the European Parliament event. Yeah. If you haven't, on the program, use the QR code and register basically now. If you haven't registered by lunch, you might not be able to attend the conference, the event in the European Parliament. And some of you have received an email asking clarification because you filled the form wrong. It's not, I'm not shaming anyone. If you want to know who filled it wrong, you can talk to me. You need to fill with your date of birth and the expiry date of the passport. It's not our rules, it's the European Parliament rules. There's nothing we can do about this. I really can't promise that they will let you in if you haven't filled the form properly. So come talk to me or email me if you receive an email from me. But please, please, please fill the form or you won't be able to get in. Okay, a couple more things and then we can start. As I was mentioning, we all come from different places, different cultural contexts, etc. And we're going to spend 4 days together. 4 days is a long time to spend with people sometimes you've never met. And what we want is people to feel safe and well and comfortable and happy to express themselves, etc. But we know there can also be moments which are difficult. So we want to create a well-being team which will be rotating every day. And it's very easy. You don't need to have any specific qualification apart from having a heart and an ear. And it's basically you're here and available if somebody is facing any issue. It can be that, we will have a panel on chemsex or on mental health. And some of the things mentioned are triggering you because of your own experience or experience of your colleague. And you just want to have a little space to talk with somebody. You can come and talk to the well-being team. Or somebody said something that you find problematic, you want to raise it to somebody and see what can be done about it, you can also come to the well-being team. So, ESWA team is available for this, but we also encourage a couple of people every day to raise their hand and be the well-being person for the day. Does that make sense? Is anyone willing to stand for today? So the person basically needs to be available if anybody else in the conference feel that they need to talk to somebody about something that happened. And it might be sometimes, maybe one of you came by themselves and is missing their little baby that they left at home and they just need a little I just want to talk to somebody, and they can talk to this person. And I know that on the first day that might seem a bit like, okay, we're all adults, we can look after ourselves, but having organized lots of events, it's a good thing to have. So we have Nenad, Agatha, and Fernanda, sorry. Oh, we don't. So you can do tomorrow. So we have Kim and somebody else raise Fernanda for tomorrow. Oh, and Kelly. So for today, maybe just stand up again and raise again for today. Nenad, Agatha, and Fernanda. Okay. So don't hesitate. It's better to just talk to somebody if you feel that something is wrong. Which brings us to the code of conduct. There is a code of conduct printed over there, which is our general ESWA code of conduct. So you can read it if you don't know it. ESWA has, of course, no tolerance to any oppressive behavior. So we will not accept any racist language, homophobic, transphobic, and other oppressive language. And sometimes, even with best intention, we can say oppressive things, we can do oppressive things. So in that case, we really want to encourage people to like speak up about this, and then we can try to resolve it. If somebody is doing or having this type of behavior and is not willing to listen and is kind of not accepting to learn, then this person will be asked to leave the conference. Okay, almost done, I promise. There's a final thing we wanted to say, is that currently there are several situations that need fundraised for. So we ask people who could afford it to donate for the conference to help us cover the cost. We appreciate very much anybody who has contributed. In the back of the room, you have some of our t-shirts and tote bags that are available for sale. As you know, it's soon Christmas, and I'm sure your brother-in-law is desperate to have Putas Unidas t-shirt. So we will explain a bit more the fundraiser later. There is 2 emergency situations that we will try to raise funds and ideally even cover these 3 days. So I'll tell a bit more about this. But basically, if you want merchandising, there is prices there. If the prices are too steep, people are listening. If prices is too high, we can do it lower, but we will love to have as many t-shirts and tote bags gone as possible and raise as much money for our colleagues that I will explain later. Okay, I think that's all. I probably forgot many things. 1 second. Yes, I forgot the most important thing. Thank you. So it's the well-being team. So, final thing, we're going to do another small exercise, but this time it's not talking to the person next to you or behind you, it's talking to yourself. Not exactly. So you have papers and pen on the table, and we want you to take another couple of minutes to think why you're here and what you want to get out of this conference. So often we attend conferences, and many of you will be panelists or presenters, but you might also be in a bit of like passive role of like listening. But we want you to think, actually, why did you come here, and what do you want to get out of this conference? And so think, one, on individual level. Maybe it's like, oh, I really want to learn more about prep. I want to learn about everything. I want to make a new friend, etc., etc. So think in terms of yourself, and then think a second wish that you have in terms of our movement. What do you want to get out of this conference for the movement? Maybe it's like, I want to explore more this project. I really want people to understand better the situation in my country, etc. So just take a minute to reflect. What is your intention for this event? One is more like on the individual level. What do you want to gain? What do you want to like gain, or what is your intention for yourself in this conference? And it could be as well just like taking a break from my life and being with nice people. And then the second one is, what do you want from this conference in terms of the wider movement? We're going to read them one by one. No, so obviously you don't have to read it. Just keep it, and then on the final day you can look back at it and be like, that was completely rubbish. I didn't do this at all. And you can blame yourself for not learning anything. I'm finished. I'm just going to say the event is live stream. Most of the sessions are live stream. If people ask you, it's live stream on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, or X. And this is the amazing Laszlo, who came all the way from Berlin to help us with the technical issue. And before I close, I also wanted to mention there is a few board members here. So maybe the board members of ESWA can also stand up. Yes. Kali, Julia, and Lila are part of the board of directors of ESWA. And we will have an election in a few months, so if you're interested in joining the board as a sex worker, come and talk to us, or come and talk to one of the board members to hear more. And now I can finally shut up. And thank you so much. And now we have our first panelist, our first keynote speaker. Marion, you're here. And the one thing I don't know how to do is present people, so I let everybody introduce themselves. Is that okay? Great. And thank you so much, everyone. Have a good conference. Bye.
Hi everyone. I'm Marion Pluskota. I'm a cisgender woman, and I'm not a sex worker. I'm a historian, and I work at the University of Leiden. And I'm here to learn. So if I'm... No? Yeah, I'm very much used to talk to academic audience, to the academic public, to other historians. Very much used to be in the archives and be happy with my archives. But talking to the wider public is something that I'm less used to. So I hope that you will find it interesting. And if you have any question, please do ask. So I'm a member of ESWORN, of course, and it seems that I'm the only historian in this group. And in a way, I'm very grateful that I've been invited here today by Luca and ESWA in general, because it is a very interesting and a very good occasion for me to learn a bit more about more recent issues. Yet, I've been doing research about sex work in the past for many, many years, and I've been able to see, if you want, or to see the evolution of this discourse surrounding sex workers and them being framed as a source of infection. And this is what I would like to do with you today, is to look at this evolution and to see how it has not changed a lot, actually, since the centuries, and that we need to go back 5 centuries ago to start to see the development of this discourse. And you will notice, I will talk about stigma as well, and you will see that in Europe we are very much still influenced by stigma that you've probably experienced as well, a stigma that comes from 5 centuries ago at least. So I hope you find it interesting. As a historian, I do believe that we need to know what happened before to understand the problems that we are facing today. But yeah, so here we go. And as in public health and sex work and religion, I will start with that and go back to the Middle Age. I think it's an issue, public health, that was already linked more or less with sex work in the past, in the Middle Ages. In case of plagues, all types of plagues, we could see that the urban institution were already closing bathhouses and public brothels in times of plagues. But it was not in a way of criminalizing. It was not to criminalize the sex workers that were working there. It was to try to prevent the spread of illnesses that they did not really understand. And I think what we need to keep in mind here is the spread of syphilis after 1492, the discussion about that, which was called either the Italian or the French or the Polish or the Catholic disease, depending where you were from. And this really had an impact on the way sex workers were then seen and dealt with by the authorities. But there were some concerns, so about syphilis that was spreading, some misunderstanding as well about what syphilis was. But what really changed the way they were seen was the rise of the new Protestant religion after 1530s. That's really led to an interdiction of what was called the public brothel in European cities. And you might wonder, why was that so important at the time? Well, the 16th and 17th centuries in Europe are a time of wars between the Catholic and the Protestant. And that led to an increase of the stigma against sex workers. The gradual closing of public brothels, the end of official patronage of sex work really happened when these two type of religion started to fight and wanted to impose as much morality, as they say, as they could. Lutheran and Calvinist cities were the first one to close their public brothels, such as in Augsburg, in Frankfurt, in Geneva, but in Amsterdam, for example, in 1578, when Amsterdam became Protestant, they did the same. So religious changes really opened the door to the influence of other, even sometimes adversary authorities than the traditional city council, who chose to intervene or not in governance of sex work and in governance of public health. And so the Catholic cities did the same thing as the Protestant one. You could see up to mid-17th century in Venice, sex workers that were paying their taxes, that were recognized as workers, that had access to public justice as well. And you can see that by then, mid-17th century, that was stopped, and they were not allowed to they were not really allowed to exist anymore. And this is something that was framed around immoral behavior, the concept of immoral behavior, which gradually became synonymous with crime. Because these courts that were first supposed to protect sex workers were more and more often used to prosecute them. So we already see in the 17th century something of association between immoral behavior, according to the religion, but criminalisation as well, with interdiction of sex work, and stigma that was still there from the religious authorities, and sometimes the municipal authorities, because they work hand in hand quite often. So it's, there were already 17th century periods when sex workers were told you are not allowed to be in the city, for example, that they were pushed out of the cities, or that they were put in what was jail at the time. This already existed. But what I've noticed, and other historians as well, and that's very interesting, was always very much limited in time what they tried to do, and not that successful. This story of public health and stigmatization is also a story of resilience over the centuries of sex workers that have been able to, as hard as it was, to continue working and to also in a way fight for their right and have their own agency heard in some cases. And this is also what we can see here. So these actions, or this interdiction of sex work, for example, were quite limited in time and with very limited result, I must say. In the long 18th, so going a bit fast, but yeah, I think we have also another very good speaker after me, so I won't spend too much time on it. But in the long 18th century, so if we move a century forward, the question then of sex work became, is it an urban issue or is it a state problem? So we had the religion, we had the wars of religion as well that framed sex work as immoral, and also as something that could be criminalized if needed. But by the 18th century, we have the Enlightenment. People supposedly were less influenced by religion, to a certain extent, but what we saw, especially in Europe, is the rise and consolidation of the state. In these 2 centuries. There's a process of rationalization, gradual bureaucratization of society, and attempts to apply standardized norms and rules. What does it mean when we link it to sex work and public health policy? Well, it means that there was a kind of respite in prosecution, and that there was a diminution of religious influence within the city council, but sex work became a public order issue. We have a development of the police as well in the 19th century, police that would act in a way that police that was not professionalized. I'm not saying that it's always better to have it professionalized, but that not very many rules, and police as well got its wages by arresting people. If the police arrest someone, they would get paid for it. So the more people you arrest, the better wage you have. Sex work is turned into from a moral issue to a public order issue. There is being prosecuted through the new police that was created in the 18th century. There is one thing that we need to keep in mind, and I think that is very interesting for a historian at least, but I think it has relevance today as well, is that municipal authorities, the way they defined a city, it really became important in the regulation of sex work. And I think we can see, Mia, do you want to, yeah? Urban issue as this is what's that we need public order in the city. So the police will, it's not so much a moral issue, but it's more a public order issue. So if you have sex workers that are walking the streets, for example, this at that point became criminalized, and this is what was seen as problematic. But the police at that point is still employed by the city council, so it's not a national thing. So it remained very local, and it's very localized. And I think that's what's really important. And I think it does have an influence still today. The fact that it's the city that looked at sex work at the time or nowadays and that decide, at least as we can see in the Netherlands, for example, that decide what is the legality of sex workers. What can we allow and what can we not? Yeah. I wanted to say the municipal authorities, which we can see with Amsterdam today, what they are trying to do in Amsterdam is really to impose at a local level their own definition of what is allowed and not. And that's something that was really clear already in the 18th century. So regulation of sex work can be a catalyst for the power struggles between different levels of authorities when it came to regulate the population's behavior. Limiting the risk of infection, I told you syphilis was an important issue, yet it was trumped by the religious issues of the 16th and 17th century. By the 18th century, we have standing armies in many of the European countries. And when you have standing armies, it's a continuous period of war from the late 17th century. Then you have the state, the rising state, that starts to be extremely concerned about the health of young men. We are not talking about the health of sex workers, we're talking about the health of young men. And this increased prosecution rate by the city, especially city where the Navy was stationed, for example, or where the army was stationed. And we can also see it during times of war. The state became directly involved in the supervision and prosecution of sex workers when soldiers and Navy seamen were involved in France, in Prussia, but also later in England. The cities could still choose to respond or not to the call of the state. It remained a local issue. You have the state that is pushing for criminalization, but you have the city that, according to the means, according to what they would like to do, the municipal authorities would decide if it was worth prosecuting or not. So stigma, public health concerns, and increased state control led to criminalization, which was exacerbated in the 19th century with the rise of medical sciences. The regulation of sex work, registration, compulsory visit to the surgeon, fines in case of no compliance, what we can see in the 19th century, was to protect, according to the law, the health of the young men, and was pushed by medical interest. This, historians have done studies as well to see if it was, if it worked in terms of transmission of STD. It did not have a significant impact on the level of STD being transmitted between people. So patients suffering from STD in the 19th century, especially the most vulnerable, became the test subject to some researchers in Europe, but also in the colonies. And this is when intersectionality became very important. This discourse surrounding sex work and infection, something that has been brought by Europeans also to their colonies at the time. And you can see a whole discourse developing around the sexuality of people that have been enslaved, of people that have been colonized, and usually it's around it's about infection, it's about diseases, but also some form of immorality still coming from the religious aspect of the past. This is a painting from a young woman. She was called Albertine, and she was going to the compulsory visit to the surgeon to be checked. That she wasn't infected with a venereal disease. It was compulsory, and as I said, you could be fined if you didn't, if you couldn't show a receipt that you have been there. This is for Finland. There's a Finland. There's a painting from Finland, but it happened also in France, in the country where Napoleon went, such as Italy, in the Netherlands, part of the Netherlands, and so regulation, and in the colonies as well, regulation was quite common. Something else that I need to add. So we have a rise of the medical discourse that see a specific group as source of infection, of disease. We also have at the same time a change in moral values in Europe again, where the gender norms regarding sexuality became stricter, and the bourgeois ideal of the angel of the house for women really spread. Women who were not conforming to this idea of purity were labeled deviant, and again, we have an increased stigma for anyone, actually, not only one, but anyone who did not fit these ideals. So what we saw at the end of the 19th century is a criminalizing discourse of the elite and of some scientists as well, or pseudo-scientists such as Lombroso. And we also have, on the other side, a victimizing discourse of the abolitionist that you've probably come across already. So there is, it's very difficult in the main discourse around in the elite sphere, the one who had the power to criminalize or not. It's either they are a source of infection or they are victims and need to be saved. There was no in between. There was no place for the agency either at the elite discourse. At a local level, on a daily basis, you can see example of agency everywhere. The two world wars did not help with this discourse because of the important number of young men that were sent to fight. There has been many advertisements to complain as well and to warn young soldiers of sex workers that could bring them disease. We've seen that, again, this is part of the mainstream. I don't want to trigger anyone, and I hope you won't, but do talk to me if I do. These are the types of posters and advertisement that you can find in many different European countries during either the First World War or the Second World War. You can see, I forgot, I'm so sorry, I forgot to say at the start of my talk, I'm mostly talking about female sex workers, as you've noticed, because this is how the discourse was framed initially. And you can see this is for the Second World War, where once again it is the sex worker is seen as the source of infection, and also of someone who wouldn't be honest because she may look clean, but or she is the bag of troubles. And you can see many of these posters in all the declination possible, in all the languages as well, where there is really a targeting advertisement against sex workers. There are many online if you want to look. So to conclude, and then I think it will be a nice transition as well to the next speaker, who is talking about much more recent issues. To conclude, what we've seen is despite the rise of the state, the regulation of sex work continue to occur at a micro level. Local authorities, police, population, and sex workers themselves remain the gatekeepers against the state. And we've seen many cases that I didn't go into them now, but many cases of agencies of people fighting for their right, even if it's by insulting the police, which happened also quite a lot. But control of sex work in European towns and cities was fraught with contradiction, backward steps, conflicts of jurisdiction, and power struggles between city, church, and state. And surrounding this idea of public health, we can see that it was very much also dependent on what either the finances of the cities were, or what the state wanted. But if the city was not imposing its control, then there was very little criminalization. So the history of sex workers revealed the entanglement between state development, increased control over the public health and population in general, but also cultural and religious stigmas, and tainted medical discourse, which all have an impact to daily access to healthcare. And I think this is something that we can still see today, and I wish you a very good conference.
Now our next speaker is our policy officer, Irena, that she's going to explain a little bit about the policy advances, all the things that we have been working. So the floor will be hers. We'll leave her to organize a little bit with the computer before handing the microphone, so you have the two hands. No? Like in the karaoke, like I need a couple of tequilas for that, you know? Yeah, like I swear I do karaoke. I discovered I don't, destroy the songs too much. So we can do a karaoke night, like maybe Wednesday or something, you know? The technical problems of the direct, there he goes.
I have a quick question while you're
Sure, yes.
for the live stream is on the website, on the ESWA website. You can find
No, yes, you can find it's put there, and the links are put there, and it goes one to Facebook and the other one to YouTube. But if you go to ESWAalliance.org, there that you can see both of them.
Manage. And just another like small logistic thing, there is a WhatsApp group. I know how much you all love being in a WhatsApp group. And if you want to join the WhatsApp group, and then it's easy to share information and links and photos and karaoke songs, you can just come to me and I'll give you the QR code. That's it. Also, just to keep talking, as you know, talking about health, COVID is not over. We have a bunch of tests there and masks. That's the best we can do. So basically, help yourself with the COVID test. If you do feel like you have symptoms, whether of the flu or COVID, we ask you basically to do not come to the conference and try to be mindful of other people. And that's it. That's it? You manage? Okay.
Yes. Great. Okay, thank you very much for introduction. My name is Irena Konecna, and I work for ESWA as a policy officer. I, together with Sabrina and Marion, is supporting our work through social media. There is Marion with the camera. And I will just explain you briefly because we have very limited time and I won't be able to go much into depth to explain you detailedly. But I would like to wrap up what's going on during past year at the European level, but also consequently at the EU, UN level, because it has like, there are some interconnections and there are some reasons what's going on. So I won't be able to go into depth and I won't be able to describe you the underlying issues, but whenever you will have a question, just ask me. I will be here during the whole conference, and I'm also planning to organize some informal meeting on Thursday before the European Parliament. If anyone is interested in the policy issues, in the legal issues, I will be happy to meet you together with some of people which I already spoke with. So I will start. Laszlo, maybe if you can go into other slide, next slide. Yes. Yes, just very quickly and briefly, to understand, European Union does not mean Council of Europe. The first map of European Union, there is still United Kingdom, ignore it, it's outdated map. However, maybe in future. But just to really distinguish, when I am speaking about EU and Council of Europe, these are two different organizations having two different agendas. So please, next slide. Yeah. Yes, and I will very quickly explain you what we did this year. We were extremely busy with the European Parliament mainly because European Parliament and the EU and the European Commission last year proposed a few very key directives. One directive was a directive which Sabrina already mentioned on violence against women. The reason why it was so important was that to define, to enact this directive at the EU level, there was a very specific legal basis because the Treaty on Function of European Union makes it possible to legalize on specific crimes, including sexual exploitation and computer crimes. And if you can hear, sexual exploitation gave an incentive why the abolitionists really took the opportunity to jump on this directive and to propose the Nordic model. Luckily, it's out, it's safe. We actually won this battle, and Nordic model is not part of this directive anymore. Then there is a victims' rights directive. To me, it seems there are no any risks for sex workers' rights, but what's quite threatening is the current revision of the EU anti-trafficking directive, and I will explain you in the next slide. Meanwhile, the European Parliament published a resolution on prostitution. Please keep it still on the previous slide. Thank you. You have already had, and I will also show you some highlights. What's good is that the resolution initially tried to propose EU-wide Nordic model, which is out. That would mean that the European Commission would need to take steps to really look at how this could be possible. But luckily, this is completely out. Still, the resolution is very bad, very harmful, but still it's non-binding. Then if we will look at the Council of Europe, I will go very quickly. For instance, everyone knows Istanbul Convention, which not all our countries are actually parties to this convention. But to quickly say, Grevio is a monitoring mechanism. It's a group of experts that does regularly country visits and monitors whether the country complies with the Istanbul Convention. What's important to say also that according to Grevio, prostitution is not a form of violence against women. And that's a really important point because usually what we hear from abolitionists is that prostitution itself is violence against women, which is not according to Grevio and according to Istanbul Convention. Council of Europe Anti-Trafficking Convention, another very important treaty. Again, there are very specific provisions, but we know that Greta is quite conscious about the Nordic model, and interestingly, they don't find a Nordic model, criminalization of clients, as a means of any obligation or implementation of this convention. So again, they don't see it as part of this convention. And that's interesting, and it's very clearly stated in many observations from different countries, and I specifically like the latest observations from Sweden, and I will be speaking with Swedish colleagues about it, hopefully, because there are quite interesting findings from the latest observations of Greta. And finally, the Council of Europe, the very, very important institution is the European Court of Human Rights. And here I will speak a little bit later. So please, next slide. Here, this is the European Parliament resolution on prostitution. I just highlighted a few points of what it does. It actually, the report calls to punish sex workers' clients. Of course, the report calls for criminalizing anyone who profits from prostitution, regardless of whether the person who profits from prostitution is, for instance, sex worker collective or someone who helps sex workers. And also, it fully ignores the fact that similar provisions are currently under the review of the European Court of Human Rights. And also, the report misinterprets the findings of multiple health studies and misinterprets also the trafficking definition, which is a shame because this is like really horrible failure. However, it passed with a little, like, slight majority, but unfortunately, it's there. Please, next slide. Now, the EU revision of the anti-trafficking directive and why it is threatening. Currently, again, the troublemaker is the European Parliament, clearly. So on Thursday, just be vocal, really. That's the troublemaker at the European EU level. So the European Parliament, they proposed, there is a Article 18. What it does, offenses concerning the use of services of victims of trafficking with the knowledge. That's actually currently in the anti-trafficking directive. The European Parliament proposes to distinguish between trafficking for the purpose of sexual exploitation and labor exploitation. For sexual exploitation, they suggest to criminalize anyone who uses the services of victim of trafficking without the knowledge that the person was trafficked, which means anyone could be eventually criminalized. Secondly, the European Parliament also proposes, and it's non-binding, but the language is already strong enough, member states shall also consider taking measures regarding, that's not visible, yes, exactly. Regarding those who solicit, accept, or obtain a sexual act from a person in a situation of prostitution in exchange of remuneration, basically criminalizing purchase of sex. So that's proposed by the European Parliament for the revision. To our knowledge, from what we had from the European Commission, there is not sufficient legal basis to go for this kind of revision. We hope it will not pass. However, and we also know that the member states themselves are against this, and they even put additional safeguards not to split these two purposes. However, still it's there, and we should be really careful and to look at what's going on here. So that's actual risk currently. And lastly, maybe next slide. Yes, and that's another thing. And I will let you know how all these things are somehow interconnected. And also what we have, the European Convention of Human Rights is the European Court of Human Rights is currently assessing a case against France. Sarah Marie is here, who is leading on the case, but I will just very quickly tell you, in 2021, the complaint of 261, most of them migrant sex workers, majority of migrant sex workers, filed a complaint against France, against the French prostitution system. This August, the court found the complaint admissible, which is great achievement. And the court also concluded that the applicants produce evidence tending to show that the clandestinity and isolation induced by this incrimination increase the risk to which they are exposed. So European Court of Human Rights considers that there are arguments brought by Sarah Marie sex workers are not ill-founded, and therefore there is need to assess the French prostitution system. It's a great achievement, although it's not to the merit of the case. So it's not the final conclusion. It was a question of whether the complaint is admissible, and it is clearly admissible. Now, what's going on? Please, next slide. As you know, the UN Special Rapporteur on Health filed a third-party intervention to the court, which means that the court requested an independent party's point of view, and she also welcomed the decision of the court, which was great. And she will be also having a keynote speech on Thursday in the European Parliament. Next slide, please. And also, in the end of September, we had another UN agency that actually issued a position paper in favor of sex workers' rights, which was the UN Working Group on Discrimination Against Women and Girls. Next slide, please. And here we go. This is the UN Working Group position paper. You can read even the beginning. It's very positive. It's amazing. And whenever you are advocating for sex workers' rights at the local level, please use this UN Working Group position paper from September. There is a very good elaboration of the human rights principles in the paper, and it's fantastic. Please, next slide. And this is the thing why I am here and speaking. However, here we are. Unfortunately, 28th of October this year, the UN Special Rapporteur on Violence Against Women and Girls, Reem Al-Salem, produced her statement on the French court decision. And that's really horrible. So imagine we have the UN Special Rapporteur on access to health, providing the third-party intervention to the court, being very positive about the court, and then we have the UN Special Rapporteur on violence against women, being very disappointed with the court decision. And she went as far as issuing the statement on the court in favor of the French prostitution system. And it seems that the feminist abolitionists were so desperate that they were really trying to find anyone at the international level who would be willing to produce at least something positive in favor of their arguments. And that's not the end, unfortunately. So not only that she produced this terrible statement, which you can find, and it's horrible, she is also right in at one point, and that's in the end of her statement when she is saying that actually the European Court of Human Rights decision could have consequences not only for France, but also far beyond. And that's why, because whenever you have the EU resolution, statement of this violence against women, Rim al-Salem, they can produce whatever papers they want, but they are non-binding at all. But when we will have a European Court of Human Rights decision, that's actually binding. That's really something. So that's why they are very scared. And please, next slide. And now, unfortunately, also even less than 1 month after this terrible statement on the European Court of Human Rights, she published a call for input for the thematic report that she is going to present in June 2024 on prostitution and violence against women and girls. If you read the call, it's terrible, it's horrible. She seeks to hear from survivors of prostitution. So sorry, you are not welcomed, you are not survivor of prostitution. And she seeks also to find information from the rescue industry, from those who are rehabilitating the prostituted women. So that's the language of the call. Now we are discussing the strategy because the deadline is January 30. There are a few ally feminist organizations who are no more engaging with this mandate holder. The reason is that previously she had a really horrible statements regarding trans rights, so they stopped engaging with her because she was really outstandingly terrible in this regard, and this actually reconfirms also her position how bad she is when she issued this new call. However, we found, or the best strategy would be to submit as many submissions as we can on behalf of universities, on behalf of your organizations, but also on behalf of your states. So we are also planning to approach Austria, Belgium, Netherlands, hopefully also Germany, to issue a statement. We are also planning to approach other institutions like Council of Europe, whether they could issue a statement or input. And that's actually important. If you could produce any kind of submission by January 31st, that would be amazing because she needs to receive as many feedback as possible, and you can also address the harmful language which is in the call. So that was also the reason. The things are really going on nowadays. The things are changing very dramatically, and if you would like to be updated, subscribe to our newsletter because we are regularly informing our allies also on the policy issues and policy developments. So that's all from my side. Thank you very much for your attention. If you are interested in more details, contact me. I am here, and as I said, on Thursday around 10 we will probably meet in the lobby with whoever is interested in the policy or legal issues. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Irena. It was it's always really interesting and good to know and to remember all these differences between the Council of Europe, the European Council that we think are the same, that we need to learn how they work and what are this one. And I've learned a lot with Irena in these years that she's been training us on these issues. And about the special rapporteur that Irena mentioned, and apart from the submission that you can formally within the formal channels on the UN you can post. that let's see if they read it. But I think that's something that we can do now that we are here in this space, that we are together, that we are sex workers, researchers, sex workers at the same time. We can do something also to let's say challenge this special rapporteur, maybe more in the social media sphere. That also in that part is, let's say in the court of public opinion. So I propose you that you can gather together between the people that are here, can record maybe a 1-minute message and say like, hey, my name is Sabrina Sanchez. I am a researcher of the Mexican University, the Autonomic Mexican University, and I agree, that, and I think that criminalization of sex work, it's a danger for public health, for all the evidence that we know. Maybe a short message of 30 minutes, and we can collect them and also start launching them with ESWA, and we can make it like a stronger statement, apart from the thing that they can write, that you can get sent by writing, that honestly, apparently she's not very willing to read. Sometimes we tell them things, and simply their moral and their, your mentality are just so close that they don't believe you at all. That's this MEP that wrote the prostitution report. I was talking with her. Irena was also there in the meeting in person for an hour and a half. I think that is really also strange for MEPs, that they usually give you half an hour, but it was like an hour and a half. And in the end, everything I say, she was not believing in me. I don't believe you what you say. It's like, bitch, like, you haven't done sex work. Like, how do you dare to not believing in a live experience? So they are there. So hopefully you as academics, you can also have this, aura of, okay, maybe I should kind of listen to this person, but let's see if we can push them also a little bit with the social media and doing a little bit this campaign. So I invite you that during these days we can record each other, half a minute, 1 minute message, and that would be great. So I think it's time for the coffee break. So we can, I don't see if they have, usually they bring it here. So I'm going to check where the coffee is going to be. So see you here at 11:30 for the next session. Thank you very much.